Welcome back to Travel Support Thursday
Hiya.
from a rainy camper van somewhere on the North Island of New Zealand. This is a show where we answer all of your questions out there to help you travel better. I don't know, we're still working on a tagline.
Travel Support Thursday.
Let us know if you got one that can describe this show, please.
We do have a jingle, though.
We got so many great questions
Yes.
today, and as always, please leave your questions down in the comments below, and we'll answer them next week on Travel Support Thursday next week, because that's what next week means.
That's how calendars work.
And that is how date and time works. So today on Travel Support Thursday, we are talking about how we feel as we're sort of like getting older, and would we still make the same decision to quit our jobs and travel the world if we were older or if we were younger? Just generally how like age affects this kind of big decision to make a big change in your life and go and do something like travel the world.
A lot of topics.
I
there.
have so many thoughts about all of these things, but the place I wanted to start first today was this question that we got that we have just been talking about nonstop for the past 2 days.
Yeah.
And I think in a lot of ways, just thinking about this question has changed our lives
Yes.
and the way that we kind of look at ourselves. Okay, so just tell us what this question is and we'll
Okay.
go deeper.
So this question comes from Rev Jerry RM, who asks, how can an individual that is semi-disabled due to back problems do the whole backpack thing when traveling? I cannot carry anything on my back. Thanks. Love all the videos.
Oh man, so this question led us down
Yeah.
such a rabbit hole for so many different reasons. I think first of all is that it's something that neither of us have truly really thought about.
And we really, really appreciate the question because for that exact reason, I think it's something that we take for granted. And
Yeah.
we by no means mean to be exclusionary in the way that we travel and the way that we do our travel content. But this question opened our eyes to, the accessibility of travel and what it means to be a backpacker.
Yeah, exactly. And I realized through talking through a lot of this over the past couple of days that being like a backpacker, whatever that term actually means, which we still couldn't come up with like a one definition for it, is so wrapped up in not only my identity,
Yeah.
but also my ego
Mm.
in so many ways of that. Like I see myself as a backpacker and that I see myself as this like person who just has like a small amount of stuff on my back and I'm walking through the world with it. And like that image of myself is so wrapped up with who I think I am that to imagine it any other way seems really hard.
Right. Like when you envision a backpacker, you think of someone who's carrying all their belongings in a giant or a small backpack, and they're world travelers, they're nomadic, and whatever that means to you. I mean, for a lot of people, I think for backpackers specifically, there's a sense of pride that comes with it.
For sure.
And I don't want to say this, but a little bit of like elitism, thinking
Yeah.
like, oh, I managed to pack all of my stuff into this backpack.
Right.
I don't need this pillow. I don't need all these luxuries. And they see people who travel with suitcases, maybe. And I'm speaking for myself, but this question truly humbled us a little bit because, I think there's a little piece of when you look at suitcases, you think, oh, that's luxurious. You get to carry all of this stuff. You must have a lot of money because you can carry all the comforts of home in your suitcase.
Right. And
And
there's, there's so many
I
angles
look
to this.
at that and I disagree. And so
Yeah.
this question really opened up a lot of questions for
Yeah,
us.
because I think first of all, I imagine myself for the first time in my life as like a person who couldn't walk. You know, like how would my life look? What would I do? How would I approach this lifestyle that we have? I started imagining myself in like those different situations of, let's say I just had a back injury and I
Yeah.
like couldn't carry a backpack. You know, that actually seems super likely that at some point in my life, probably
That would happen.
that would be me, right?
Mhm.
That would be me. And how would we approach this lifestyle of travel, and would we still be backpackers if we were?
Yeah.
Kept coming up as a question, and there weren't really a lot of clear answers. But I would say the biggest thing that I think of is that this idea of being a backpacker, I think, the more that we talked about it, it's less about just what you're wearing. It's
Yeah.
less about your choice of like luggage, whether you wear it over your shoulders or your hips or whether you like
Yeah.
drag it behind you on a rolly thing or whatever. It has nothing to do with that, really. I think it's more of a mindset thing.
Yeah.
I think it's more of a mindset. Like the backpacker mindset, at least from my perspective, is it's a person who's like going out into the world and bringing as little as possible from their own home to go and experience that. So that way they can leave as much awesomeness, as much space available in wherever they're going to have cool things happen, to have surprises, to be able to learn things when they get there. So that way they're not bringing all those comforts that they're used to from home, but they want to experience the place that they're headed to in as real and authentic as a way as possible. And I think that's a backpacker. And right now that kind of seems like it's shorthand for just like a person who is wearing a backpack who is walking these countries. And that's such an oversimplification, I think, of it. And it's so exclusionary to think of it that way that I have to feel that I definitely do feel as though it's much more of a mindset than it is a choice of luggage.
Agreed. This is the first time that we actually thought about why we love carrying our backpacks so much, like why our backpacks mean so much to us. Last week, we talked about our backpacks. We talked about your evolution of backpacks and how they've changed
and how tied to me they are, like how proud I am of them.
And there is in a lot of ways, this question helped us realize that it's just a backpack, but the backpack is an analogy to like the way of life that we're choosing. Leaving the luxuries and the comforts of home is essentially saying I am choosing to not take my own expectations of what my life is like, what my home country is like, what I usually do at home to this new place that I get to visit. And that's like kind of the beauty of, I think, the idea of carrying less, the idea of a backpack.
Yeah. So when you say do the backpack thing, that's what I first imagine, is that like doing the backpack thing doesn't at all insinuate like where you want to go or how you want to experience it. Just like, to me, when I hear that, I think like there's only one right way to travel. And that right way to travel is just to put a tiny backpack on your back and go. And that's like the image that I have in my head.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's not the only way to travel. And that's not even the most right way to travel.
I mean, honestly,
we have a suitcase now.
Yes, exactly. This question is so timely because even though we love our backpacks and we still have them, we on this very trip was for the first time had to pack a suitcase. And mostly because of our camera gear and our tripods and our, drone, all these different things that come with us now that we're filming and traveling. And it was really hard. It was a struggle for me because to me it meant, well, we have to pay more money to check on the suitcase.
Right. And are we backpackers anymore?
Yeah.
What does this mean for us?
Yeah.
Like, what does this mean for our channel? What does this mean for the type of people we are? Like, does this mean we've changed? Does this mean we've sold out because we like can't do it anymore because we're carrying like, 25 pounds
Too
of
many
camera gear?
luxurious cameras. Before I started traveling internationally, I was a suitcase user. I always had a small carry-on. I actually really, really love it. And logistically, if someone is looking for like what is the most minimalist kind of carry-on, there's so many awesome suitcases out there. But the one tried and true that I loved, that I don't know if still exists, is this. It was from IKEA. It was like, I don't know how
I remember
big
that one.
It was like this tall. I don't know, maybe
how tall is that?
4 feet, 3 feet tall.
It would have definitely fit in the overhead bin of anywhere.
Yes.
It was a carry-on suitcase.
It was so small, but it was like a pod style. It was hard, but it was soft and hard shell. It was soft and hard shell, and the rolly wheels were actually made out of rubber, so they didn't make the sound of like. It was just, it was silent.
Yeah.
Anyway,
truly the perfect suitcase.
But I loved that suitcase, and then when I started backpacking,
again, just that word, right? Like, what does that mean?
When I started carrying a backpack, I kind of just like shoved it out of my life, and I wish I still had that suitcase, honestly.
All right. But I think so. To get to your question, right? Like, how would we approach this? If we were any differently abled than we are right now, how would we approach traveling? And I think that that's kind of the onus of this question. I think probably just get one of those really nice rolly suitcases.
Yeah.
And we have one right now. Or if I was in a wheelchair, I think I would get one of those super cool like Phoenix rolly suitcases that they have. They like clip to the back of the wheelchair, and they're like a mini wheelchair in itself that you can put a backpack on.
JanSport also, I found JanSport made a really, really cool backpack that have all these different kinds of adjustable straps that allow you to wear it as a backpack, but also strap it to a wheelchair, strap it to different. There's so many different adjustable straps that allow you to use it in different settings, and it doesn't change the like style of the JanSport bag.
Yes.
And I thought that was also a great backpack.
Just bring the bare minimum that I needed, which for us is actually quite a lot now.
These days,
but
yeah.
if we weren't filming, everything would be like a couple of pairs of clothes and maybe like a tablet, a phone, and some chargers and the passport. And that would be it. And all that would probably fit into this hip thing, so that way the weight wouldn't be on my shoulders, and that might work a little better.
And I guess, but the underlying thing behind that is, you know, why are we bringing so little? Why are we doing the backpack thing? And I think it's like the mentality of being open to the world, but also logistically, when you're carrying very little, it's just a lot easier to say yes to more experiences, right?
For sure.
You can pack up your things really quickly. You can get out the door. You can catch a train. If you know there's one coming in 5 minutes, you know, and you're just down the road, yeah, I can just grab my stuff and go without having to like sort through every little thing. And it means that there's a lot more opportunity to like meet more people, shop locally at the stores that you're at in the countries and the cities that you're visiting.
And I think we can't continue with this without acknowledging that it would be more difficult to travel in some places than others.
For sure.
And I think overall, like just imagining myself, like obviously anytime you like have something that you used to be able to do, and then as you get older, all of a sudden you just like can't do it anymore.
Or with an injury.
Or any of those things, like that feels awful.
Yeah.
That feels terrible. And I think to not acknowledge that, I feel like we've fallen into this trap sometimes too, with the things that we say. We're like, we want to be inspirational, but we also kind of forget, and we take that for granted. Yeah. And I also feel like and I feel like the second part of this question is like, for sure, I would choose some locations more frequently than others. We were just at the glowworm caves, down into the earth, and the entirety of the thing is all wheelchair accessible.
And it was amazing. Like the whole experience was accessible. A lot of these trails, a lot of these walks that we're experiencing here in New Zealand are all accessible.
Yeah.
I think the accessibility of public transportation in a lot of countries like
Such a big deal.
Taiwan, Japan, South Korea makes it so easy to get around. Even the Camino, certain Caminos made it very, very accessible for different people. I think the fact that you can send your luggage ahead, that's a known service. On the Camino Portugues, there was a whole community of people who were riding bikes and bringing along people who had disabilities so that they could also experience the Camino. This was something that I think I thought a lot about when my family and I visited China for the first time together. I think I even have a journal entry about it. I saw a family carrying their son who was in a wheelchair up the stairs of the Great Wall. It touched my heart. That is love and the epitome of sacrifice. And at the time, I thought of my dad, he had passed before we got to go with him. But I remember thinking, I thought of my dad and what would it have been like to have him there. Because you start to wonder, like, are there certain places that people can't visit? Are there certain experiences that you can't have because you're unable to walk or carry things? And I don't know what my point is, but I hope that there's a world where eventually traveling is accessible for everybody. That's the hope.
I think the thing that I would say is that don't let this traditional one-dimensional explanation of what a backpacker is keep you from thinking that if you do it any other way that you're going to have any less of an experience. Just go into it with that same openness that a backpacker would have, that same want of trying to like connect with the place you're in instead of bringing all of your comforts from home. And you'll be more of a backpacker than anybody I've ever met.
I'm also we're going to leave this article in our video description, but this question brought up a really great conversation, and we found this article by a backpacker who asks, am I still a backpacker if I can't carry a backpack? It's a very great read, and it talks about her life and her journey as a backpacker until she suffered huge back injury, and she struggled with this. Logistically, if any of you have any suggestions, any thoughts, or want to share about your experiences, we'd love to hear them in the comments below.
Yeah, and I would also say that, like, I know we rambled a lot on this one because we have so many thoughts, because it, like, turned from this thing of, like, okay, what cool other options are there to, like, bring our stuff with us if we were differently abled than we are right now. And then that just, like, opened up this entire other can of worms for us of talking about, like, what does it mean to be a backpacker and all this, like, you know, theoretical stuff.
So we know this may not have answered your question directly, but this, and honestly, that's because we're probably not coming from a place of expertise here.
Yeah.
And we wanted more to just open up the conversation about this idea of what it's like to be a backpacker, what it feels like, what would we do differently if we weren't able to carry our backpacks anymore. So we'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts? What are your suggestions? What are your advice? And what are your experiences? We want to live in a world where travel is accessible, not just budgetarily, but also accessibility wise for everybody.
Yeah.
So our next question, I love these kinds of questions. It's very logistical and something that I think we take for granted. This next question comes from user NF2E18EY7K.
Nailed it.
Who says,
so easy, just rolls right off the tongue, doesn't it?
Love these videos. Thank you for all that you do. 2 questions. How do you handle washing your clothes while traveling? And how do you handle leftover food? Do you bring collapsible containers?
Oh, man.
Great question. We've actually gotten this question from a lot of you in different formats. So let's just talk about laundry first of all, because this is very top of mind.
Yep.
We've been in our camper van now for almost 3 weeks, and we just did laundry yesterday. It was getting really bad.
I got to tell you, after putting on fresh clothes after not wearing fresh clothes for over a week and just being cold and damp for that entire
and hiking everywhere,
it was a religious experience. It was warm. I put it on. I was just like, oh, yes. Oh, my God. It has been raining for so long here in New Zealand that having these fresh clothes was just amazing.
Life-changing. Logistically, there are a lot of different ways that we handle laundry while on the road, but specifically with the camper van, since it's been raining, we just go to a laundromat. We search in Google Maps, we search for self-laundry or laundromat, put in our laundry for an hour, stop at a nearby cafe or a pub, and then dry them and pick them up.
Yeah, it's basically the same as being at home. Sometimes when we're like traveling around Europe or other places, we will hand wash our laundry in the sinks or in the showers.
Yep.
Generally, that's just like putting a bunch of shampoo on the thing while I'm in the shower on, let's say, underwear or t-shirt or whatever, and then just like hanging it up outside near the window somewhere where you got some airflow, letting it dry. So we'll do that if we're feeling extra cheap or like our budget's running out. We'll do that.
Or if there's no laundromat nearby.
Yeah, or in a lot of places in Southeast Asia, they have these great like wash and fold services that are actually pretty affordable.
Yeah.
And you'll just like drop off your laundry at one of these places, and then 24 hours later, they'll just like return it to you in a plastic bag, all nicely washed and folded.
It smells so good.
And it's just absolutely amazing.
Yeah. As far as leftover food, I mean, in the van, it's been cold enough that we can leave stuff out.
Yeah.
And we also have a chili bin or a cooler in the back that we keep food. We don't generally bring collapsible containers with us.
Almost never.
Yeah.
Almost never. Sometimes some like Ziploc bag things, but we just try not to order too much.
Or try not to make too much so that we eat just enough for what we have.
Yep.
Okay, on to the next question. This question comes from Gel2786, who asks, does age make you anxious? Do you think that one can only afford to make this life-changing decision at a certain age?
Jeez.
Would really appreciate any insight and wisdom you can share. And I assume when they say life-changing decision, it's this
Like
quitting our jobs to travel the world.
Yeah, that's what I would assume as well. So like I think about this, I think about time just in general and getting older every day. Sometimes way too much. Way too much. And I think I'm kind of in like a special situation here in that like one time I got dengue fever, and I don't really want to tell all of the story, so I'll just summarize it because I just don't feel, comfortable talking about it yet. But one time I got dengue fever, and it stopped my heart for a little while. And when I woke up from this thing, which I luckily did, I realized at that moment that I have absolutely no control over how much time I have left on the planet. I have no control at all. And all that illusion of like young, fierce, like invincibility that I had going into like my first round the world trip when this happened, all of that was just torn away in that instant when just a mosquito came and bzz, bit me, and my heart stopped. And I think ever since that moment, I've always felt like I don't have enough time. Like I've been in a rush. I've been in a hurry ever since then, nonstop. And I think that that's why I have chosen a lot of these like life decisions that I do now, like quitting my job 4 different times, like working a year to then travel a year to work a year to travel a year, just like almost obsessively doing that because I genuinely didn't and still don't think that I'm going to be like around long enough to see my retirement because I have no control over it. I have no control over it at all. So I think at that moment I realized that like I needed to do stuff that I wanted to do now. Because if I had no control over when the roller coaster ride was going to end, I wanted that roller coaster ride to be as interesting and awesome and exactly what I wanted it to be. And some part of me is thankful that it did happen. And some part of me feels really vulnerable all the time. Like it's just like, you know, like this moment could just be gone at any time, or this camper van trip could just come to an end if we like careen off the road. And I hate to feel so like fatalistic about it, but I think about this all the time. And I think it's a direct result of like fully feeling my mortality at kind of a young age. I was like 25 or something at the time. That to really to hear a question like this where you're like, can you ever be too old to decide how you want your life to look? I'm just like, no. No one else is gonna be like, okay, you now have permission to go on a 1-year trip that you've always wanted to do. No, you have to carve that path for yourself. No one's gonna do it for you. And honestly, before this thing happened, I would have never carved this path because I would have just assumed that I would do it later. I would have just assumed that 20 years would pass, and then later on, once I had enough money or once I got permission or maybe after I had kids or any of these other things happened, once enough life had passed and I'd like earned my keep or whatever, that I would be able to go and travel the world. And it's such a big risk. It's such a big bet to assume, like the biggest risk you can take in life is to assume that you're going to be like healthy enough to do the thing that you want to do later. For me to, when I read this question, I like hear myself before I realized how fragile this life and this existence was, and just how quickly it can all be taken away by the smallest, stupidest things. You know, like just, and how little control that I had over the entire situation. But I had full control over what I did with my own time. There are always compromises that you're going to be making. And there are always like, you know, things you're going to do for other people. No question. And honestly, if you let it happen, you could spend your entire life doing stuff for other people and it would probably make you pretty happy. But I had a feeling that if I didn't start this traveling thing, if I didn't see the world in the way that I wanted to when I was still healthy to do it, that I would regret it. And I can live with a lot of stuff. I can live with discomfort. I can live with like 7 straight days in a stinky camper van.
with no shower.
With no shower. But I cannot live with regret. I just can't do it. In some ways, it's made me just absolutely crazy. Because I feel like I'm always pushing us forward. And I know that this affects you a lot. Because I'm always like, we need to do this now. We need to do this now. We need to do this. Because I have this like thing in my head, this like worm ever since then of like, I'm running out of time. I'm running out of time. I'm running out of time. And I can't get rid of it. I can't get rid of it. And part of me still, you know, part of me still wants it around. And the other part of me is just ashamed to still be like pushing as hard as I can, even though I know it like stresses our relationship a lot, because I know you're thinking like, slow down, slow down. We've got time. Slow
Yeah.
down. We've got time. But like, I can't turn it off. So for me to, when I read this question and I see that, like, where is it? Does age make you anxious? Yeah. Yes, it does make me anxious, but I find it extremely motivational. And do you think that you can only afford to make this life-changing decision at a certain age? No, but I think that you definitely can't afford to wait too long. I know that this like didn't directly answer your question because it might be more like financial or monetarily
Yeah,
like
I mean,
angled,
you
but that's
answered the
that's how I
question.
think about it.
I think you answered the question really well, and I think like
Sorry, I just
Yeah.
monologue for like God.
no, this is
I think
important.
about this every single
It
day,
is
and I'm sorry I
important.
just like exploded on this question,
I
but
think if you
Ugh.
watch,
just so afraid of letting it all pass by, of just missing my chance. I
We're
just
right here.
no. I just want to hold on to it. I just need a sec. Okay,
It's
Lisa.
important. I think if you watch any of our videos, you'll know like we move very quickly. I think
Yeah.
I think in general, and I think you're not alone in that feeling. I definitely feel like we're always running out of time. There's so many things, there's so many places I want to go, there's so many things I want to see. And for context, we're in our 30s, late 30s now. And even though I don't feel like it, I still feel like I'm in my 20s. I think a lot of life events can change what perspective you have on age, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think your experience was a very, very urgent, very understandably like traumatizing experience, but one that like I think you left with a sense of I must seize the day.
Yeah.
And I think that is one that
I think it was the only good thing I could find that came out of it.
and I think that's
And I think
one,
I just clung to it.
it's important because I think for people like me, I can get very complacent. I can get very content. And I think contentment is a really good thing.
Yeah.
Savoring moments, cherishing moments are really good too. But I need that that a little bit of urgency, that little kick in the pants. Is that what people say?
Sure. Sure.
That kick in the pants to like get going, I mean, I
think I'm
you,
just permanently kicked in the pants.
I will say I'm not as anxious about getting older, but the motivating thing for me, I think truly what came from this experience and quitting our jobs and traveling the world is, yes, we got to see amazing things, but I think to your point, this whole experience of quitting our jobs and traveling the world has taught me how much I was spending my time giving to other people's dreams, to
Yeah.
other people's things.
And that maybe there was some compromise, some way,
Yeah.
something in the middle. Obviously not just like giving up on everyone that you love in your life and just disappearing,
No.
but maybe doing that for a couple of months
Yeah.
or maybe a year or just to take some
Because
time for you.
For me, and I know this is like a totally different experience, but for me growing up, I was always the person that I had to stay close to home. I wanted, I was a part of my family. I was a part of my community. So it is my responsibility and my obligation to take care of things at home and to be there physically. And for that reason, I never left. I never traveled far. I never left home. But I think at some point I realized, especially after my dad died, that I had spent 26, 27 years of my life preparing for the possibility of something happening.
Right, like waiting for something bad to happen,
Yeah.
expecting that it's tomorrow or next week or yeah.
And then it happened. But I wasn't prepared for it. I mean, obviously there's a give and take for everything, and everyone's situation is different. But for me, that that moment was the moment that I realized, like, I'm not in control either. I think there's a balance. And so even though, yeah, like, I think we have different personalities and we have different motivations for why we do the things that we do, right? Like, you're very urgently like, this has to happen yesterday, and I'm like, but let's just sit and enjoy this moment for like a whole 24 hours. We like have the same goal, you know?
Yeah.
We have the same reasoning, and I think
Just like different ways of trying to get to
we
it.
just
Yeah.
want to build a life that is, I don't know, meaningful for ourselves and for other people.
Squeeze every last drop out of this thing and give as much of that juice as freely as we possibly can to everyone around us.
Yeah.
You know? And that's
Yeah.
I don't think that there's any right time or any wrong time to do this. It's just the time that you find to make the decision that you're going to change your life. And whenever you do make that decision, whenever that time is right, you're going to know it.
And you're going to do it in the way that you know how.
Yeah.
I think, like, obviously, again, like, our situations are very different. We're in a place right now where we are luckily healthy and able, and we've saved financially. We had families that were supportive of our decisions.
Yep.
There's all this caveating that we can say, right? There's all this couching that we can do. I don't think it's ever too late.
Yeah. And if you're sitting out there being like, how do I do this? I want to travel for a long time, but I just genuinely don't know how much it costs or where I should go or what I should do or any of those things. Like, that's all that we want to talk about on here. That's like,
we want to give
yes,
trips away.
That's the whole thing we're doing here is that. So please ask those questions into the podcast as specifically as you possibly can. And we'll try to answer them as best we can because that's what we want to do. That's why we're doing this. All that we want to do with this channel is help remove those hurdles that I'm sure for some of you are real, real tall. And for others of you might just be like medium size. And for some, there might be no hurdles at all. Either way, there's no judgment here. We don't care how many hurdles you have. We just want to help you get over them, whether they're tall or they're small. So just tell us what hurdles you have to making this like life of travel, or I don't know, the Camino that you want to walk, or this couple months sabbatical, or whatever thing that you've wanted to do. Yeah. Tell us about the hurdles, and we'll do our best to help you get over them. I have no idea how to wrap this thing up.
But I will say, though, that the sun is out, so that's always a good sign.
That is a nice change.
We started it, and it was raining really, really hard, and now the sun is out.
I just want to say that I really, really appreciate how thoughtful and actually deep these questions were today, and how I just love that our community that we have here is asking these like real questions. Yeah. You know, and these are the exact type of thing that we love talking about, and we could talk about it forever. I hope that any of this is useful or helpful.
Yes.
But please, please, please continue to ask these types of questions. I think this bigger idea of really how do you make this life change happen? How do you free up space, time, and enough cash to be able to like make a real actual like dent?
And what's the impact of it? You know, what are the actual, I mean, we all know that there are a ton of travel creators on the internet, a lot of great travel creators, and it can be easy just to show the lifestyle, the beauty of it, the highlight reel, the incredible countries that we get to visit. But we love to talk about the nitty gritty, the things that you don't always get to see in a 3 days in Tokyo series.
Yes.
So yeah, we love your questions, logistical, not logistical, deep or not, like keep them coming. We really appreciate it. And we'll answer them next week on Travel Thursday.
Yep. We appreciate you guys. Thank you so, so much for watching this one. And yeah, we will see you next week.
The sun is out. We'll show you.
It stopped raining.
It's been a rainy season here in New Zealand, but look at the beautiful, beautiful redwoods that we are surrounded by. See you later.
See you next week.
Oh boy.